Two people can earn the same money, start with the same savings, and still end up living completely different lives. Not because one got lucky, but because one tiny decision changed what every future dollar had to do. That is the paradox. The path that looks slower can create more freedom. The path that looks upgraded can become more fragile. So what actually matters? Income, discipline, timing, or the structure underneath everything? Follow this from age 22 to 40 and you will see something most people miss. Wealth is not just numbers. It is time, margin, recovery speed, and the ability to choose your life before life chooses for you. Here's the setup. Same age, same job, same savings, same paycheck. If your 20s were purely about income, both stories should look almost identical, but they do not, because income is only the visible layer. Most people don't make early money decisions with spreadsheets. They make them with identity. They are buying a feeling, a signal, a version of adulthood that looks good from the outside. This video is really about one invisible difference. Do you build your system before your lifestyle expands, or after? That single order changes almost every result that follows. And to be fair, both voices make sense. Enjoying your 20s matters, so does protecting your future. The real question is not spending versus saving. It is whether your spending creates friction faster than your income creates stability. So let's watch the split happen in real time. At 22, the difference looks tiny. By 24, it becomes visible. By 30, it changes the ground beneath them. By 40, it changes what life is even allowed to look like. Nothing dramatic happens here. No windfall, no genius move, just the first structural difference. Builder Lane decides that some money will leave the checking account before it can become lifestyle. The first big split is not luxury, it is privacy. One path chooses cheaper housing and shared space. The other buys independence earlier. Emotionally, that feels small. Mathematically, it changes everything downstream. The second split is transportation. A nicer car does not just cost more once. It raises the monthly floor, narrows flexibility, and quietly tells every future paycheck where it must go first. And here is the tiny move with the giant future. About $187 a month gets automated before it can be negotiated away. Not huge, just consistent. But consistency is where invisible systems begin. Builder Lane is not just saving. Builder Lane is thickening the floor. That matters because the early game is not about looking successful. It is about making sure one small surprise does not control the whole month. This is why early personal finance is so deceptive. The gap does not begin as $1 million. It begins as a few $100s repeatedly being assigned to different jobs. Visible costs get attention. Hidden costs do the real work. It is rarely one giant mistake. It is layers of small friction that keep future money busy cleaning up old decisions. At 22, this still looks harmless. One path feels a little leaner, the other feels a little more comfortable, but the system has already been chosen, and systems love to scale. Builder Lane begins with a Roth IRA. Think of it as planting inside a protected greenhouse. The point is not excitement. The point is giving early dollars more years to quietly do their job. At the same time, the emergency fund grows. That may sound boring until life gets expensive for a month. Then boring turns into powerful, because reserves buy recovery speed and emotional breathing room. Lifestyle Lane does not implode. That is the trap. The pressure arrives through dozens of normal-looking choices that slowly claim more of each paycheck before long-term goals ever get a vote. Then the first raise appears, and this is where many futures quietly diverge. One person upgrades assets, the other upgrades ongoing life. Same raise, completely different long-term consequence. By now, the difference is not just mathematical, it is psychological. One path starts to feel manageable, the other path starts to feel crowded, even without any dramatic life event. Compounding is not only positive growth, friction compounds too. Good systems get easier, expensive defaults get stickier. That is why the early years matter more than they seem to. By 24, the split becomes visible. Builder Lane has built real positive net worth. Lifestyle Lane is below zero overall, not because of one giant event, but because the monthly system kept pushing in opposite directions. And we are still early. No business exit, no miracle stock, no outrageous income, just structure. Which means the next stage will not be about luck. It will be about what that structure now allows. Now the asset engine gets stronger. Builder Lane uses the company retirement plan and captures the employer match. In plain English, that is extra money available only if the system is already in place. Notice the pattern. Raises are not just more spending power, they are routing power. Builder Lane keeps turning higher income into stronger infrastructure instead of a permanently higher monthly appetite. By the late 20s, Builder Lane reaches a powerful threshold, enough reserves and discipline to buy a duplex, live in one side, and let the other side support the mortgage. This is where wealth building begins to feel different. Money is no longer only coming from labor. After expenses and a maintenance reserve, the property still adds monthly cash flow. Once you add more than one asset engine, the whole game changes. Progress stops depending on a single paycheck. It starts depending on how well your systems keep feeding one another. Lifestyle Lane is not making bizarre choices. That matters. These are normal upgrades many people make the moment income improves. The problem is not the pleasure. It is the permanent monthly weight.
By 30, the difference becomes painful in one specific way. Builder Lane handles surprises with reserves. Lifestyle Lane may need to tap long-term money early, which adds extra cost exactly when life already feels expensive. At age 30, the gap is no longer abstract. One path has real assets, real margin, and multiple engines. The other still works hard, but most of that effort never gets to stay and compound. This is the age where comparison becomes misleading. From the outside, both adults may seem equally functional. From the inside, one life has support beams, the other has polished surfaces. At 30, the most important difference is no longer earnings, it is retention. Who gets to keep enough money long enough for that money to start carrying some of the load? Visible wealth gets attention because it is easy to photograph. Quiet wealth gets control because it is designed to hold up under pressure. One is seen quickly, the other is felt later.
This is where optionality starts to appear. The person with more than one inflow is not automatically rich, but they are harder to destabilize because every expense does not have to be carried by labor alone. A better financial system does not mean you avoid problems. It means you recover faster. And recovery speed is one of the most underrated forms of real security. Run the same ordinary life setbacks through both systems, and the answer flips. The stronger system is not the one that looks better in a good month. It is the one that bends less in a difficult one. Builder Lane's 134,000 is not magic. It is stacked modest wins: retirement, equity, reserves, and cash flow. The strength comes from combination, not from any single heroic move. So by 30, the difference is clear. Wealth did not arrive as a lottery. It arrived as a staircase of plain decisions repeated long enough to become structural advantage.
In the 30s, Builder Lane starts using the rules more intelligently, not just saving more, but placing money where taxes work less aggressively against long-term progress. This is where many people feel confused. They are earning more than ever, yet life feels tighter. Usually, the issue is not one dramatic event. It is a thin margin meeting adult complexity.
Adult life adds weight: health, family, repairs, uncertainty, responsibility. Stronger systems absorb that weight quietly. Thinner systems announce every added pound. A key transition happens here. Builder Lane stops treating money as a monthly reaction and starts treating it like a system that deserves maintenance, review, and small corrections before problems grow teeth.
At this stage, advice can matter, not because someone else will create discipline for you, but because the tax code rewards people who understand where money should sit and when to move it. This is another hidden truth. Wealth does not only grow because you earn more, it grows because you leak less. Taxes, fees, and sloppy timing can quietly eat years of progress. Lifestyle Lane now faces a different problem. Old commitments still occupy future income. The challenge is not drama, it is duration. A slow drag can be just as limiting as a big setback. By 35, the difference is no longer just net worth, it is how heavy daily life feels. One person still has responsibilities. The other has responsibilities plus a system that offers less room to absorb them. Later, Builder Lane uses a legal real estate tool called a 1031 exchange. The simple idea: move from one investment property into another without triggering taxes immediately on the gain. That lets Builder Lane trade up. The goal is not owning more doors for ego. The goal is increasing productive assets while keeping the system aligned with long-term flexibility.
By 40, the cash flow matters almost as much as the net worth, because passive income changes what the money can do for real life right now, not just someday. Here is where wealth becomes human. When a parent needs care, Builder Lane is not magically stress-free, but there are options, and options are what money feels like when it finally becomes useful. This is the painful illusion. Income can look solid while life still feels narrow. Without enough margin, a good salary may create comfort signals without creating real control. This is why comparison is so dangerous. Appearance can stay respectable for years, even while the underlying system moves in a completely different direction. By 40, the gap has become enormous, about 1,068,000 versus 58,700, and the biggest difference is not bragging rights, it is what each person is now allowed to do.
This is the real upgrade. Wealth is not only ownership, it is access. Access to time, to recovery, to generosity, to slower choices, and to a future with more than one acceptable path. When money is well built, it can become care, not luxury, not status. Care, the ability to help without instantly destabilizing your own life, is one of the clearest forms of financial maturity. Builder Lane does not have to quit work tomorrow. That is the point. Freedom is often not leaving work. It is being able to renegotiate your relationship with work. This is what many people actually want from money. Not endless luxury, but a thicker umbrella. A system that keeps ordinary storms from becoming constant emotional emergencies. Wanting a home is not enough if the system never trained you to build a down payment. Many later life goals fail long before they become visible, simply because the habit architecture was never installed.
Even when some money exists, not all money is equally useful today. That is another hidden layer people miss. A number on paper can still leave you short on real-life flexibility. By now, the deepest difference is emotional texture. One life still has pressure, but it feels navigable. The other may still function, but it requires more constant negotiation with the calendar. This is why your 20s matter so much, not because you must be perfect, but because repeated money behavior eventually stops being behavior. It becomes the life structure you move inside. Here is the hidden variable that changes the entire story: optionality, the ability to choose among several decent paths instead of being forced into whichever path costs the least this month. This is why income alone does not answer the question. Optionality comes from margin, assets, and lower compulsory spending. Without those, a bigger paycheck can still produce a surprisingly narrow life.
That is why the little automation mattered so much. It was never just $187. It was the first repeated vote for a system that would later create options. Most people do not live inside isolated decisions. They live inside loops. The goal is to build a loop that makes good choices easier, instead of building one that constantly needs rescue. This is the distinction most people miss. Looking successful is about signals. Feeling secure is about structure. And structure matters more when life becomes less predictable and more expensive. The big outcome was never hiding in one giant move. It was hiding inside small repeated choices that looked almost too minor to matter at the time. So the real hidden variable is not just wealth, it is optionality. The number matters because it changes how many good choices remain available when life asks harder questions.
Now for the real lesson. The point is not that everyone should make the exact same choices. The point is that your money system should match the life you actually want to protect. Some people need more flexibility now. Others care more about long-term stability. The right answer changes with your values, your responsibilities, and how much uncertainty your life can comfortably absorb. That is also why judgment is cheap and understanding is harder. People rarely choose financial friction because they are irrational. They usually choose it because the short-term emotional reward feels immediate and deeply human. Most people spend years optimizing visible upgrades, but invisible upgrades are the ones that improve your resilience, your sleep, your recovery speed, and your future negotiating power. So yes, the dollar gap is huge, but the deeper lesson is bigger than the number. One path bought more options, more stability, and more room for life to stay human.
If you want a practical way to think about this, use 5 steps. Lower your monthly floor, automate early, build reserves, capture raises, and buy flexibility before you buy appearance. Step 1 is simple but powerful. Lower the floor. Reduce the amount your life must consume every month before you even begin making meaningful progress. Step 2 and 3 work together. Automate before you negotiate with yourself, and build enough reserves that a normal setback does not force you into expensive reactions. Step 4 is where many futures drift apart. When income rises, send part of that increase towards assets and stability before your lifestyle permanently claims it. And step 5 is the deeper principle. Buy flexibility. Buy the kind of financial structure that gives future you more ways to respond, recover, pause, help, or change direction.
So we end where we started. Same paycheck, same age, same savings. Different system. And over time, that different system quietly decides whether money becomes pressure or permission. That is why tiny repeated choices deserve respect. They do not look important in the moment. They look important later when you discover they have been building your life in the background. Of course, this is education, not personal advice. Your right path depends on your goals, your risk tolerance, your family situation, your location, and what kind of freedom you actually want. If this helped you see money more clearly, subscribe and stay with me here. We are not chasing flashy answers. We are building better mental models for a calmer, stronger financial life. And if you want the next layer of this, watch the next video, because a higher income can still feel surprisingly tight when the structure underneath it is working against you. Thanks for watching.